Have you ever really stopped to think about how a human being is actually built? From scratch? We kind of imagine it's all just this big, complicated mystery happening in the womb, but what if it follows a clear, logical plan, like a blueprint for a construction project? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore. So let's start with a really simple question. When you're building a person, what has to come first, the frame or the covering? I mean, do all our parts just kind of grow at once in a chaotic soup? Or is there a specific step-by-step instruction manual being followed? To get our heads around this, let's use an analogy we can all picture. Building a house. It's a process that makes a lot of sense, and as you're about to see, it's actually a fantastic parallel for how you were built. And the comparison here is just, well, it's perfect. When you're building a house, you absolutely have to put up the timber frame first, right? You can't hang drywall in thin air. It's a physical necessity. The exact same logic applies to us. First, you need the structure, the skeleton, and then you can add the covering, the muscles. Okay, so structure first, covering second. That makes sense. But now, here's where things get really, really interesting. Modern science only confirmed the sequence pretty recently with powerful microscopes and advanced imaging. But what if I told you that a text from 1400 years ago described this exact order of events with incredible precision? Just listen to the language here. It's not poetic or vague. It reads like a step-by-step process. First it says, made the lump into bones. Okay, so that's step one. Then it says, we clothed the bones with flesh. That's step two. The wording itself suggests a very specific, deliberate sequence. And the grammar here is absolutely crucial. The verse uses the Arabic particle fa. This tiny word doesn't just mean and, it specifically means then or thereafter. It insists on a sequence. It creates a timeline. It's not A and B happening together. It's A happening first and then B happening after. So we have this ancient description that makes a very specific claim. But the big question is, does it actually hold up to what we know today? Let's put the text aside for a minute and take a journey inside the womb to see what modern embryology tells us. This timeline shows us exactly what happens. Around week 6 of development, the process of bone formation kicks off. A little model of the skeleton, made of cartilage, starts to take shape. But here's the critical part. It's only after this framework is in place that the muscle cells get their cue. They literally begin to travel and migrate towards these newly formed bone models. It really is like a microscopic assembly line. First, the frame shows up. Then, these little precursor muscle cells, called myoblasts, travel to the construction site, and finally, they wrap themselves around and attach to that skeleton, creating our muscular system. The structure absolutely has to be there first for any of this to work. Okay, so now we have two sets of blueprints, right? One from a 1400-year-old text and the other from 21st century science. So how well do they actually line up? When you put them side by side like this, the correlation is it's stunning. The text says, made into bones. Science says the cartilaginous skeleton forms first. Check. The text says, then we clothe the bones with flesh. Science says muscle cells migrate to wrap around the bone models. Check. The parallels are just undeniable. And this is why that word, clothed, is so amazing. It's not just a nice, poetic image. It's a functionally perfect description of what happens. The muscles don't just grow next to the bones. They actively wrap around them, giving the body its form and function. They literally clothe the skeleton. Now, of course, you've got to be intellectually honest and consider the counter-arguments. Not everyone looks at this and sees a smoking gun. So let's put on our skeptic's hat for a moment. The main skeptical view goes something like this. Look, these things happen so close together, almost at the same time. To say one comes after the other is really splitting hairs. It's not a clear sequence. It's more like everything is developing all at once and you're just reading a pattern into it that isn't really there. But that view kind of misses a couple of huge points. First, there's simple structural necessity. Even if the timing is super close, the muscles have nothing to attach to without the frame. The framework has to exist first. And second, this isn't some fringe observation. Dr. Keith Moore, a world-famous embryologist who actually wrote the main textbook on the subject, The Developing Human, studied this verse. And he confirmed that its description of bones forming before being clothed with flesh lines up perfectly with what we see through a microscope. So when you put all the pieces on the table, the specific grammar, the data from embryology, the confirmation from top experts, a really clear picture starts to form. And it brings us right back to our original idea. Your development in the womb wasn't some random, chaotic event. It was a highly organized construction project that followed a very precise blueprint. First, the frame was built, and only then was the finish applied.
The simple takeaway is this. A text that's 1,400 years old described a specific sequential biological process, a process we could only actually see and verify with 20th century technology. It got the blueprint exactly right. And so that leaves us with one heck of a question. We have a description of a microscopic process written down centuries before anyone could have possibly observed it. A blueprint that is both ancient and, as modern science shows us, astonishingly accurate. So how do we explain that?